Okay, here we go. The Oklahoma County Planning Commission, room 224, 1:32 p.m., December 19th. Notice of this meeting was posted on December 13th, 2024. Call to order. Roll call, Eric.
The members of the Planning Commission today are Mr. Rob Murray, Mr. Gary Jewell, here, Mr. Rob Talbot,
Here.
Mr. Charles DeFuria,
Here.
Mr. Greg Davidson,
Here.
and Paul Foster is sitting in for Commissioner Davidson.
Of the previous meeting, November 21st, 2024. Everybody got a copy of the minutes? Any questions, concerns, changes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Second. Roll call, Eric.
Mr. Murray, Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. Talbot,
Yes.
Mr. DeFuria,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
and Mr. Foster.
Yes. Awesome. Item number 5, discussion and possible action to approve/deny the general plat of Avondale Estates GP 2024-17. Eric?
Yes, this is a plat that is obviously new as it is a general plat, but this is part of a zoning case that took place towards the beginning of this year. This is the property that is directly east of the Deer Creek High School and administration buildings located there off of 206 and MacArthur. The corner there itself is zoned commercial already. They just haven't done anything as of yet. It's a commercial PUD actually. But this is what they're proposing in regards to the subdivision itself. It's zoned R1, which means all those lots are 1 acre and larger in size. Let me hand out, I know I sent the plat to everybody before the meeting, but let me hand out a paper copy so everybody can look at those. And if you have any questions, then we can go over those. What you have in front of you, what they're proposing is 90 lots on approximately 148 acres. The areas that you see there kind of in the middle and kind of south middle of the property, if you will. Those are areas that have, I think there's a couple of small creeks that go through there to some degree. So there's going to become common areas, drainage easements for the development itself. But I think everything else is pretty straightforward as far as what they proposed. We had a few comments just about a couple of the lots themselves, but besides that, I think everything for the most part's in line with our requirements in regards to the general plat. That's all I had, unless you had any particular questions.
If I'm reading this correctly, there's going to be 2 entrances, one onto Covell and one onto MacArthur.
Right, that is correct.
No lots from the floodplain?
No, there's no really floodplain there on the property. There's a couple of blue line streams to some degree. That's what makes up these common areas and private drainage easements that you see that run across the property from one's east to west, one's from east going northwest.
Deer Creek Water District?
Right. And from my understanding, they're going to have Deer Creek water run to the subdivision. All these lots are 1 acre, so they are going to have aerobic or septic systems.
This might not be at this stage, but I know like at down on 164th, which I know is the city, but they have sidewalks that go so the kids can walk to school. Do we know if
That's one of the things that we have in our subdivision regulations And I think this is going to be a conversation that we were going to have with the developer as the preliminary plat moves forward. I don't know how keen the county is in regards to putting sidewalks on section line roads. So that's, in the past, I know that's been an issue. Obviously, the speed limits in this area are significantly less than other areas across the county. Um, it is a requirement in our subdivision regulations, but I know on some other cases that we've had in the past, the county kind of steered away from that because of the speed limits that were involved. So it's definitely something that we're going to have to work out for sure to see if that's something the county would like to see or not.
Any other questions for Eric? Is there anyone here who'd like to talk in favor of this project?
Hello, Jessica Bloy with Johnson and Associates representing the applicant. As Eric stated,
Address too, please.
1 East Sheridan, sorry. As Eric stated, this is a 90 lot single family subdivision on 148 acres. In regard to water, we do already have a letter from Deer Creek Water confirming that they will serve the property, and we will have septic systems for sewer. And I am happy to answer any questions. And I also have an exhibit here that kind of shows you the lots and then the ample green space that is provided, if that helps.
Questions? None for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to talk in favor of this project? And hearing none, is anyone here to talk against this project? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve / deny item number 5. Motion approved. Second? Second. Either or. Roll call, Eric?
Mr. Murray, Mr. Jewell, Mr. Talbot,
Yes.
Mr. DeFuria,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
and Mr. Foster.
Yes. Okay, item approved. Item number 6, discussion and possible action to approve / deny the preliminary plat of Timberline PP 2024-04. Eric?
Yes, this is the development that is located off of Douglas and Waterloo. You may recall that this has been done throughout this calendar year as far as getting the rezoning and starting the plating process itself. As far as the preliminary plat, they've done just about everything that we've asked. I know there's some concerns from the adjacent property owners. One of the concerns in the common area, and I'll get out the plans here, but in the common area that is in the northwest part of the northwest corner of this development, there's a pond there, and there's an outlet that goes northwest. There was some concern with that adjacent property owner being affected by that drainage there. The engineer has turned that drainage away from that property owner back and towards the bar ditch itself. We did receive an email from the property owners, I think to the west of this development. They were concerned about traffic and just the speeds and just the amount of traffic out on Douglas now. I know that came up in the zoning meeting, that came up during the plating process. So that's another concern. Obviously, that goes beyond this development. There's a lot of activity that's going on south into the city of Edmond that's more of a contributing factor to the traffic along Douglas. Obviously, Waterloo Road, and as you go back to I-35, is another contributing factor to a lot of the traffic that's out there. So it's definitely something that the county is looking at. I know ODOT is looking to start the interchange out there on I-35 at some point. I don't know the exact date, but we've been getting phone calls as far as acquisition of right-of-way. But back to the original concern of Douglas there, like I said, this development sure is going to add to what's out there, but I think the majority of the issue is really back into the city of Edmond at this point. And just the speed limits that are along there, there's some site distance issues, but again, it goes beyond this development that itself. So those were the concerns that were brought to our attention by email, by phone calls. Some of the issues that staff had as far as drainage calculations, those have been addressed. They've sent us new calculations, so we're good with that. A couple of issues that we're working with the engineer on is some of the road grades in the neighborhood itself and the entrance as far as the taper. As far as our code itself, they pretty much meet our code at this point. So they're trying to work with us to see if there's any um, added benefit that they can provide to the county more than anything else. Um, so that's all the comments that I had, concerns that we've gotten from some of the property owners that are out there. If you have any questions for me, I'll be more than happy to go over those. Any questions you may have. I've got the plans here if you want to take a look at the plans as far as the drainage that I was speaking about, if you'd like to take a closer look at that.
You said pretty much meet our code.
Yeah, as far as our code, yes. There's just a couple of things that they're working on with us. They meet code already, but it's something the county engineer would like to see as far as road grades. There's some road grades that are around 8%, and our code allows that. But the county engineer would like to see 5 or 6. So if they're looking at that for us. As far as the entrance there, just concerned with the traffic there in the area. If we can do a little bit more of a road taper, we're having those discussions. But as far as our code is concerned, they meet the code. We just brought these concerns up, and it seems like they're willing to work with us on some of these. So those are just a few items that we're going to have to continue working on.
What about detention? Is it on those plans?
It is.
Okay.
So they have a few detention locations. So if you look at the northwest corner, there's a small detention area there. If you look down, the majority of the detention is towards the south property line, towards the entrance, that common area there.
Mhm.
And then if you go back to the northeast corner of the development, that common area, there is some detention that's there as well.
Okay.
But yes, these plans that I have here, if you want to take a look or closer look, depict that better.
So Eric, what about this dead end road in the south east corner there? What's that all about?
So there is the development that is taking place in the city limits of Edmond. And so one of our code requirements is, if possible, to connect to any other developments in the area. And so fortunately for us, the engineer that is working on this particular development is also working on that development. And so they're trying to connect those developments together to where you have traffic flow internally instead of out on the section line roads.
The email you reference, is that considered a protest or just?
The way I've got the letter here, the way I take it is more of a concern. And like I said, it's a concern that's been brought up from the very beginning. The property owner that she was here at one of the other previous meetings, and I'll hand this letter out so everybody has a chance to just look at it. But she was at some of the other proceedings that we had in regards to this item. She brought up those concerns then. Like I said, they're valid concerns, but I think it's more of the area itself, just the amount of development that's occurring, especially in the city limits of Edmond. From my understanding, I think they're even looking to build a new school further south on Douglas. So there's just a lot of development that's taking place in the city of Edmond. And obviously, as you get out that way, you get easier access to I-35 on Waterloo Road. So everybody's coming back north, going back west. People are coming south and to return to their homes. So there's a lot of traffic that's occurring out there. So it's obviously the county is going to have to look at this at the end of the day. I know that we've looked at Waterloo Road over the years to do some improvements as far as four laning that or even three laning it to where you have a lane in each direction, but you also have a dedicated turn lane. So I think in the county's perspective, at least from what I've seen, it comes down to a monetary issue as far as finding the funds to actually go out and build what is necessary to facilitate the traffic that's out there. But like I said, the majority of this is Edmond that's causing the issues that you have.
So, Eric, to go back to my question, so this south line, so is that not the county? Is that the city of Edmond to the south?
Right, at that half section line there, that's the dividing line between us and the city of Edmond. So the city of Edmond is everything south.
And so it's the same developer, but they're working with the city of Edmond to the south.
I think it's a different developer. It's just the same engineer.
Okay.
So Crafton and Toll is designing that development in the city of Edmond. And so, like I said, fortunately, they're doing this one to where we can tie those in.
Okay. All right.
Now I think it's a 60-foot wide strip of land going up to the north towards Waterloo. Is that just a easement because of what it got broke up for the property to the east of that, or?
Right. So in this case, this property owner owns that. It's access for, and I don't think you were here yet, actually. In one of the previous meetings, the general plat, there is an easement that goes up to Waterloo Road. And this property owner owns all of that. It's going to become part of the development, but it's also access for one of the property owners that's out there. He currently doesn't have anything on his property, but if you ever wanted to go in there and build a home or whatever the case may be, that's still going to serve as his access into his property, so he's not landlocked.
And I've seen, I went on the assessor site, seen that there was a lot back there that would have been, if not, okay.
Yeah, so it is part of this development. It's been, as far as the development's concerned, a common area, but it's still going to be used for access for that particular property owner. From my understanding, there may be even some utilities back there, OG&E, that sort of thing as well. So they're still going to have access to that. That's not going to change.
And so we have the property he was talking about, the city of Edmond down here, if it does not materialize and that dead end road there, is that gonna cause an issue that they wouldn't have a cul-de-sac or something to turn around, or is it just property owners would just have to understand it?
It's just, if anything, if that development didn't materialize in the south for whatever reason, let's say that you had an emergency event, you could still use that. Those people that are in there could use that as emergency access out of the subdivision if they needed to for whatever reason. I'm trying to think of any other developments that we have currently. There's one or two that come to mind that have a similar feature as that. Before our code change that we have now, so the code that we currently go by was changed in 2021. There was some concern about entrances and exits in some of our larger subdivisions. So you have something that's somewhat similar to this and a couple other developments that they exclusively use that for emergency access out of the subdivision if needed, because people felt there wasn't enough access in and out from one entrance.
Is there a certain amount of lots or acreages that define the fact of having more than one?
We added that in this code. So previously that was not in the code, which was an issue. So in the new code, yes. And that's 50 lots is the break point. So if you have more than 50 lots, you have to have 2 points of access. So in this case, that's going to be one of their points of access since they're tying in with that other neighborhood. So they have 2 points of access, the entrance and that location there to the southeast as well.
So if the other development doesn't materialize though, you said it's emergency way out, but I mean, I don't see people are gonna be driving through that wooded area to get into the thing, so I mean.
Right. It would just be able people to leave the subdivision. Let's say you had a grass fire or something along that line. People to be able to leave. But sure, it's not going to be paved because obviously this developer doesn't own that. We can't make somebody go pave something that's not there. So it's going to be access for that purpose. But yeah, it's not going to be used for anything substantial.
and I know this is technicality, but they also do have the access going through the easement to the north side.
Sure, sure, if that ever came to be too, sure. Let me,
But just to be procedural, can I get a motion to receive the email from Eric, please? I second. Roll call, Eric?
Mr. Murray, Mr. Jewell, Mr. Talbot,
Yes.
Mr. DeFuria,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
and Mr. Foster.
Any other questions for Eric? Okay, hearing none, is there anyone here who'd like to talk in favor of this project? Name and address, sir?
Good afternoon. Kendall Dillon with Crafts and Toll, 300 Point Parkway Boulevard, Yukon. And I'll be brief. Eric already hit all the high points, but just to remind you all, this is the current zoning is a PUD, which was approved just a few months ago by the Board of Commissioners. And I might just make note that the master development plan in that PUD document is an identical match with the preliminary plat that you see before. So that was all approved. Everything in this plat conforms to that PUD. Then just a few months ago, we come before you all with a general plat, which again is identical to this preliminary plat that you see before us. We had a lot of these discussions in terms of some of the traffic and all those things were discussed at that meeting, and that general plat was approved as well. So the preliminary plat that you see before you today is an identical copy of what the master development was in the PUD that was approved. It's exactly like the general plat that was approved here by you all just a few months ago. And like I say, we conform all of the zoning regulations as well as the subdivision regulations. Eric mentioned a few things that we're working with them on, and just to kind of reiterate that, we comply with your regulations, but city or the county engineer has a couple things he would prefer. And so we're certainly doing everything we can. We want to, we want to work with you all as much as we possibly can. And so even though we comply, we're still trying to work through just a couple of issues. They're not huge issues. And I think we're going to be able to kind of meet in the middle, hopefully, on some of those. So everything that your code requires, all the zoning subregs have been met by this preliminary plat. And we certainly happy to answer any questions, would ask for your approval.
Could you talk about the plans in Edmond? Just kind of give us a description of what the status is of those plans.
Yeah, we got it was a PUD as well, which is a mix. There's some higher density single family. There's duplexes, some stuff like that. It's owned by a client of mine that does a lot of development in the area. So I don't foresee any scenario to where it's not developed. Obviously, everything's market driven. We've kind of moved forward on it. I don't know their exact plan on which phase and when exactly that phase is going to kick off, but I do know it's going to happen. But nonetheless, in terms of, I think from your planning standpoint, Eric can correct me if I'm wrong. I know Edmond, their subdivision regulations, just as well as Oklahoma City, everybody I know of, as a planning strategy in today's society, they require street stubs into undeveloped property. So Edmond's code requires a street stub into this property that we're developing here. And they do it so that you can have those internal connections. Now, sometimes neighbors don't like that, but when you look at it from a planning standpoint, what they're trying to do is to relieve as many trips and traffic out on the arterials, and then also just provide that connectivity for vehicles in general, right? It's like it's easier if you, depending on which direction you want to go, now you've got some options. So that development will be moving forward. I can't speak to the timeline of it, but if you look at just good planning, I think if you look at certainly Edmond subdivision regulations, as well as I think your subregs, I think the street stubs, if they're not required, they're certainly encouraged.
So how many outlets in that development to the south? Is it are they an outlet
Two. At least two.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how many houses? Or
600 and I don't know. It's quite a few. Yeah. Well, obviously, everything to the south, if you look at that area, which I don't know if you recall it, but especially with the zoning, it's pretty obvious what's going on south, right? And there's high density development and a lot of the things that Eric had mentioned earlier, some of the traffic, some of the things, I think even people parking on the road had to do with development stuff going on to the south. But you're butting up to Edmond that has full utilities, and so it's going to develop in a pretty dense manner.
So in Edmond, like 600 are they single-family houses?
and duplexes. There's a mix.
And so they only require two outlets to section roads?
Mhm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and another thing about this one in terms of access is because what we have done, which a lot, like for instance, Oklahoma City, and I don't like not to compare municipalities, but when you start to look at access requirements, this one is divided with a boulevard median. And so even though it's one access from an emergency standpoint, if for something were to happen, and then you still actually can go the wrong direction and you got a minimum of 20-foot lane. So even the boulevard medians kind of, from an emergency access standpoint, can be considered as 2 access points.
All right.
Water and sewer on this. side here.
No, it's well and septic. Mm-hmm.
No bearing on this, but just out of curiosity from the last meeting,
Mhm.
the lady who had the concern about the easement on the northwest side, or northeast side, you guys were able to talk, or?
Yeah, and there's documents, again, it's 2 private parties, but there's documents in place that grant them access. There's nothing that, if we wanted to, there's nothing that we can do legally to take away their access. But on top of all that, there's no intent of us taking away their access, right? Like it's, it just so happens that this tract of land comes as a whole, and the whole included the 60-foot strip up to the north. And so it's part of what we own. It's part of the common area. His access will remain, so nothing's going to change in regards to how he can use and enjoy his property.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to talk in favor of this project?
There was 4 or against?
4, we're still on 4. Yeah. Okay, hearing and seeing that, is there anyone here who'd like to talk against this project? Name and address, please.
Marianne Serblin, and my address is 24520 North Douglas Boulevard, Arcadia. I am directly to the north. I'm one of the 2 north neighbors to this development. Okay, just to answer a little bit, this is what the entrance looks like to that green belt that would go service Mr. Cook's property. He's not here because he's coming down sick, whether it's COVID or something. I told him stay home, don't bring COVID here. Okay. And he needs, guaranteed access to that. Now, that friend of mine, she can't be here because of some family. But what she wanted is moving that road to the middle to where the current entrance is to the property. And she's worried about traffic backing up on the hills, so she can't get in and out of her driveway. Her husband's a contractor, and he brings big trailers of heavy equipment in and out of there. And then she's worried about subcontractors and building materials and it being unsafe. So she would like to see that moved to where the current entrance is. Now, for me, and he's kind of has been addressed that retention pond A is right next to my property, and the outlet is discharging onto the corner of my property that I have problems with keeping grass on and erosion. And the engineer he was talking about, and I'm hoping we agreed on, is to move that so it's not going at a 45-degree angle. They would be going directly to the west, discharging directly into the front bar ditch, and then moving the outlet a little bit further away from my property, basically moving it to the south. Yeah, so that's what I'm asking for. The other thing is to keep the contractors, off my property, because we've already had an incident where one came over and took some trees out on my property. Now, there's another guy that, for whatever reason, couldn't be here. He lives directly behind that to the east. And I don't remember the detention pond, but it shows it discharging out on his property. And he doesn't want that. And he doesn't want the grading right close to his property. He's got pipe and cable fence, and he's worried about the dozer people taking out or damaging his pipe and cable fence. but he's worried about that pipe discharging onto his property. And the discharge looks like, per the plans, like like that's being built on his property. So that is his concern.
Questions?
Yeah. Does that water drain on your property now?
The property, the water from
When it
detention pond
rains,
A,
yeah. When it rains, does that water drain on your property now?
I don't think so. If so, it's very little, but I'm afraid of increased, and I'm worried about bringing dozers that's going to, even though that you got the erosion control up, I'm worried about, dirt coming over on my property, and I'm trying to get grass to grow on there.
Well, that's the whole reason of detention, so water doesn't go drain any faster now than it will later.
Yeah, but like I said, what I was asking is that he turned that discharge where it goes straight into the bar ditch. And we talked about it, and I think he's in agreement where it's instead of going at a 45-degree angle, it goes directly south, directly west, directly down into the bar ditch, and then moving that whole thing, that outlet, a number of feet back to the south. I think that's an easy fix.
On your drawing or your detail.
Well, we'll go back to him.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else here who'd like to talk against this project? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, then we'll move on. Eric, you want to?
Just to see if I can address some of her concerns, I provided the plans as they currently are. So the change that has taken place on that particular outlet, instead of it being at a 45 going towards her property, it's been shifted to where it goes directly west into the bar ditch.
It's what you mentioned earlier.
Right. Now,
Oh, they want to go right.
Okay. Oh, just that. Okay. And they're gonna make that change? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we see, yeah.
and so the other concern that she had was brought up at one of the other meetings as far as the location of the entrance there. Kendall, I may need your help, but if I recall correctly, the entrance where it is now is at the bottom of the hill. And we had them go back and look at the engineer's green book. What is that thing called? Yeah, so Stacy had them go back and look at it based on the speed limits to see if that location was any issue. They provided us those calculations. The county engineer reviewed those. He has no issue as far as where the driveway is. I understand their concern, but as far as engineering and what our code allows, what is there now is allowed. So, like I said, I just wanted to refresh everybody's memory on that conversation that was had in one of the previous meetings.
Sir, would you mind coming? Sure, you had-
My only thing I had is on the blow up detail of it.
Of the outlet?
Yes, it shows the north arrow appears to be going east. Is the reason I was,
Yeah, I don't have the plan in front of me, so
that's all
I don't know if it's that, but sometimes depending on the location map, but
This is north, that's what I was saying.
Okay.
And you just note on the plan. Makes it confusing. It does have done.
yeah, but just so historically, where we have the outlet or where we had the outlet, is where, if you want to just say that's the point that it exits our property, is where we originally designed that outlet. If you look at it, it basically just clips a corner that's in the right of way. And so I think her request is she would like to get that discharge point a little further to the south so that it would hit the bar ditch before it technically clips her corner. Or I don't even know that it's her corner as much as it is just that portion of the right of way. So I sent Eric an exhibit showing that, yes, we could turn that outlet, but I've also mentioned to him that we're probably we'll send him another schematic or design to where we actually may just keep the same angle and pull it south a little bit more, because the bar ditch drains to the north, and it's probably better hydraulically to keep it angled so that it's going in the same, generally the same direction of flow as the 90-degree angle. But either way, I think the point is even though that's where the historic drainage wants to leave our site, it's not going to be any problem for us to move it south, which we've agreed to do.
Okay, I got a question. So on Douglas Boulevard, is it gonna be like another lane there?
Yeah, when you say another lane, obviously we still dedicate the right of way that your subdivision regulations account for. When we build our entrance, we build our returns for the street as though that were a widened improvement. So it would be 24 feet so that it would account for 2 lanes on the east side of Douglas, so that whichever point Douglas were to be widened by somebody and it's 4 lanes, it ties in with our returns. Those tapers are what we're building. Now the question I think that Eric and I are working on is how lengthwise north-south of a taper do we need? But again, I think code-wise, just keep in mind, we're meeting your code. We're just trying to work through those things. So drainage-wise, we're trying to help our neighbor out. I think we can do that. Everything else, again, it's complies with your code, and certainly it's exactly like the master development plan in the PUD and the general plat that was approved a few months ago.
Now, he was alluding to, that's gonna have an acceleration, deceleration lane.
That taper is what we're talking about. Yeah.
So, but that'll move the ditch line further east also. So when you get to the north side of the property where it butts there.
Well, but it won't go that far north. That drain, our entrance is on the south. That pond and all that's on the far northwest.
It appears that that lanes goes full length of the property.
That's the right of way line.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, the streets are not shown on a plat. Yeah. So what you're looking at is lots and right of ways. You don't put streets on a preliminary plat. That's on the general plat that was before, but not on this. This is the document that we will end up, once it's built, just changing the name on it and gets filed at record. And all you do is property lines on a plat, not streets.
And I know this has no bearing on what we're talking today, but you'll ask the contractors to stay within your limits, so we don't have any issues there.
Yeah, we have no rights, and nor have we done anything but stay on our property.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve / deny item number 6.
Motion to approve.
Roll call, Eric?
Mr. Murray, Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. Talbot,
Yes.
Mr. DeFuria,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
and Mr. Foster.
Yes. Item approved. Item number 7, discussion of possible action to receive the November 2024 fee fund report and expense report. Are Christmas gifts on there?
Negative.
Allowed to say that in a public meeting?
You can say it. You're not going to get
Still
anything,
no.
but you can say it. Yeah, we're in the red now, so we'll see how long that lasts. Usually the winter time is a little bit slower for us. So we'll see how this goes moving forward. But as of now, we're $2,200 in the hole.
So if you, at the end of the year, we're still in the red, what happens at that point?
We'll have to go to the Board of County Commissioners to see if we can get some money from the general fund.
Hopefully it'll be there, right?
Yeah. Someone's going to have to go out and do a cakewalk or something, one or the other.
And end of the year is in June,
That's correct.
so we all resigned in May.
Well, you guys don't get paid anyway, so it doesn't affect you.
Exactly. So we're getting the same raise next year is what you're telling.
Yeah, the only ones that are resigning are us.
That's not happening. All right, so to get back on point, I'll entertain a motion to receive the fee fund report.
Motion.
Second. Roll call, Eric?
Mr. Murray, Mr. Jewell, Mr. Talbot,
Yes.
Mr. DeFuria,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
and Mr. Foster.
All right, item number 8, in accordance to the Open Meetings Act, section 311.9, new business is defined as any matter not known about or which could not have reasonably been foreseen prior to the time of the posting of this agenda. Any new business, Eric?
I want to throw something out there just because.
Uh-oh.
Something to keep in mind, the new schedule we put out, and I'm going to send you guys an email, but one of those meeting dates is June the 19th. And the county is closed the June 19th for Juneteenth. So we're going to have to reschedule that meeting if we have any items for that month. So just kind of keep in your mind, would you like to go Friday, the 20th? Would you like to go to the next week, which would be the 26th, that next Thursday? Just something to ponder. It may not even be an issue. If we don't give any items, then this is a moot point, and I'll send you guys an email, but just something to keep in your mind and kind of think about.
That's also election day for us.
That is true.
Your March meeting, I presume it always falls during spring break through most schools around here, doesn't it?
I think so, yes.
Do they ever have a problem quorum up here? I mean,
Other than she's never here.
Well, I don't think you're either, so.
She goes on spring break.
I mean, if,
Well,
if
you're firing us, so.
I mean, if we ever have a issue with the meeting, it's typically in the summertime. June, July, May. Yeah, that's usually when we're kind of thin on a quorum, but
90% of the time, meetings either gonna be canceled because there's nothing on the agenda, or we don't have enough of a quorum to have a meeting that day. Otherwise, we're having meetings. They made us meet through COVID. Okay, well, then there's nothing to act on that, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Roll call.
Mr. Murray, Mr. Jewell, Mr. Talbot,
Yes.
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Davids,
Yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes. Exactly. See, every time Denise is not here, we can get our work done.
All right.
Just so I just need to sign right here.
Oh, really? So I put it on Oklahoma County side, it's just Logan. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, we down here on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
So when they start squeaking, they don't like giving us money. We should be self-sufficient. We try.
You know why? All states is probably coming over.
Yeah, and that has really put the kibosh on anybody who wants to give a penny away. Yeah. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Feliz Navidad.
What language is that?
Yeah, yeah, we do have a meeting here.
Yes. Son coming to visit?
Yes. Hey, the good thing here is Saturday.
You don't know.
Yeah, no.
See, I didn't. That's all right.